Welcome GRD 122 to our Corvette practice exercise. And I may even start with a barn first in case this is a little too complicated to get started with. But I just wanted to show you this. This is something I worked on just to practice because I wanted to make sure that I went through it myself first and just to test the difficulty of it. And this is my finished product. I traced this car and created a vector graphic of a car, something that could be used for the Victory Classic icon instead of the car they had. So I wanted us to have a nice project where we could work on illustration, and something that took some time because we haven't worked on a lot of illustration, and to put it in a product I think is a nice idea. So this is what I came up with. This took me about 2 hours, and I'm doing this in Figma. This is not an Illustrator. I did it in Figma, and I'll go over what's involved in here. And just to show you what I started with, I went to Photopea. First of all, I found an image of a car that I thought would be a good car to work with, and to simplify it, because there's a lot of detail in here, a lot of stuff in the windows and all kind of different colors going on, and you know it's kind of hard to decide where would you start if you're going to trace this in a vector program. So what I did to simplify it is I went into Photopea, and you could do this in Photoshop as well, and I pasted it and then I posterized it down to like 3 or 4 colors, which kind of simplifies the shades. And you could do that to black and white, and you could do it to a color. Sometimes it's easier to do it to a black and white and then add color later. But I just did it to the color version. I'll have to see what works better here. But what I did was take this and put it into Figma. Now you don't see it in Figma. This is a finished product, but let me just go through this quick. I'll go over all these layers here. These are all separate layers, and some of these layers have different elements in them. Like this layer has a whole bunch of kind of that pink color that I'm using in there. But anyway, here's the mirror gray. That's the gray trim. I'll turn off the mirror white, which is the mirror, and then there's also a door handle in there. There's white trim. Any white trim I put on the car. There, it's all turned off. Other than the chrome. I called chrome something different. Then the windows gray. Those are the kind of the gray trim. And then the windows black. It's not really black, it's kind of dark gray. And I'll turn them off. And then side muffler gray. Turn that off. That's the trim on the muffler. And then side muffler. I'll turn that off. And there's just black underneath. And then tire black trim. I'll turn that off. Gray trim. Turn that off. Back rim. It's just a circle, an oval, an ellipse. Front rim. Again, just an ellipse. Chrome in the front, the dark parts. Turn them off. And the trim on the chrome, just a little bit of gray there. And then the chrome on the front, turn that off. And red trim, any of this kind of pink trim, I call that. You could almost call it pink. I'll turn that off. And then I have an outline in red. I'll turn that off. And I have an outline in black. So this is how I started. And that has a drop shadow on it, just so you know. So if I turn that off. And what I started with was this. I brought that image in from Photopea, and I turned down the opacity, and then I worked back, and I copied a whole outline in black, like that. And then I turned it off so I could see the other stuff. And then I went over the red, and I did that all pretty much with the pen tool. Now some of them are angular areas, some of them we curve afterwards with the little arch. Now I didn't want to do 2 hours of a video doing that, so that's why I did it first, and I'll kind of go over the highlights. And then I did some red trim, then I did some chrome on the front, then I did some trim on the chrome. And notice I labeled everything. I changed the name here because everything will just say vector, and you want to make sure that you know what everything is so you can identify it. Chrome on the front, that's the dark part. And there's the tire. Now I could have just left the tire like that, but I put some trim in there. And that's the back tire. And there's some gray trim. And then there's some dark trim, which makes it look more like a tire. There's the side muffler. I think it's a side muffler or a panel or something. It was hard to tell from this picture. I don't know if that's it looks like a muffler. It doesn't look like something that you would step on. So that's why I called it a muffler. And then I just put some trim on it. And then I put on black windows. Now I could have made these darker. Now I could always go in here, double click on this, and change my fill color and make them darker if I want. And now they're darker. And then I did kind of a light area that you would kind of see through the back. Now it's not perfect. You can see this stuff is just basic vector shapes. A lot of times they're straight lines. I didn't curve everything because as an illustration, everything doesn't have to be perfectly curved. You can see these things here. These are a lot of straight lines here. Windows with the gray part that you could kind of see through a little bit. I could fix that and go in here. I could always double click on here and keep double clicking and go in here and, you know, fix any of this if it doesn't look right. You know, if it doesn't line up properly, anything like that, I could go back and fix it. I could change the color. That's why I did a couple of these on the same layer. Now you could do multiple vector shapes kind of on the same layer. They're treated as one shape together. So you could kind of move them around, but you want to do simple shapes. So I'll hit done here, and then I'll zoom out a little, and then I'll just kind of continue on what I did. Some white trim I threw in here, and again, just pen tool kind of stuff. Mirror, I just drew a mirror in white. Nothing special, just traced around. It has some arches on it, and I'll go over that. And mirror gray, just did a little gray trim on there. Just, you know, real basic shapes. Nothing special here. And that's it. And then I put a drop shadow. I'll turn off the car in the back. Then I put a drop shadow on my black outline. And it came out pretty good, I thought. I didn't do any trim there. I could look at it and see what I forgot. I forgot to do those little gills there, which actually for a Stingray I think is kind of neat. I should probably put those in. Didn't do that yet, but this is what I wanted to practice with, and then I wanted to incorporate something like this into our package and kind of do some illustration, because companies are looking for people who can do illustration. You don't have to be perfect at it. You don't have to do everything out of your head. You can trace something and make it your own. That way you don't have to worry about copyrights and things like that. This is your own art, even though I based it on this art originally. I made vector art out of it, and that's what we're going to try and do. So I'm not sure if I might give you another exercise that's a little simpler to start, just to get familiar with Figma and tracing again if you haven't done it for a while, because we haven't spent a whole lot of time tracing things in Figma. But I'm going to do something like that. But I just wanted to show you where we're going with this, because you could do a nice illustration in Figma. Don't need Illustrator for this. Just need a pen tool and need to know how to use the pen tool. So we're going to try and do something like this, and then take this graphic and then put it into our layout so we can do a nice kind of updated Victory can layout. And my idea is to have you trace your own car, so you're not all doing the same car, but I wanted to practice one. So this will take a little time, and that's okay. I don't mind us taking time. It took me 2 hours. It'll probably take you more if you're not as familiar with the tools and stuff like that, but that's okay, because to have something like this, to say, oh, I created this vector piece of artwork and I put it in my label, I think that's a valuable skill to have. You know, a lot of people know how to work on Photoshop and things like that, but to put together something that you can illustrate, if you have a client that says, hey, can you do a picture of a car? I want a picture of a Corvette or an old car or whatever. To be able to do that, you don't have to be a super artist that you have to do it out of your head. Who knows how to do that? I don't. I can draw a Corvette out of my head, 3/4 view. I look at one and then kind of do it. So we're kind of tracing it and kind of making it your own and taking away some of the detail and just hinting at detail, and that's what we're going to be doing. So I just wanted to show you this as kind of the next step. So I'll be kind of going over this with you. I'll give you something to work on. Again, I don't know if I'm going to jump right into the car or do like a barn first, but just wanted to kind of give you an idea of where we're going next. So hopefully you'll get excited about doing this, and I'll try to take it slow so you feel comfortable using the pen tool in Figma.